Find a comfortable seat, or if you're particularly depleted or feeling fatigued today, you could go to your back. We'll start on our back eventually, but just some food for thought as we settle into practice. So the practice today on standing postures, and I titled the practice "Standing in Our Power." And so, when we think of standing postures, we think of our legs, of course, and our grounding to the floor, to the earth. But I think there's quite a bit more to standing in our power than just our legs. So if you're familiar with the energy systems in the body, the 7 chakras, the third one from the base is the solar plexus, the Manipura, which means lustrous gem. And this is our right above the navel. So right above the navel, the solar plexus. And this energy center is about the courage to be who we are, to stand up for what we believe in, to have confidence, to maybe have the ability to look at some of the limiting stories that we believe about ourselves. We might call that the inner fake news. We're all familiar with that term now. So we all have it. We have an inner fake news. Stories we tell ourselves about, usually about not being worthy, not being good enough, being too much of something or too little of something else. And those, of course, those limiting stories limit our lives. So my invitational question for you this morning is, what would your life be like if there was nothing wrong with you? How would your life be different if you were completely worthy, you were completely enough, and there was nothing wrong? If you're not already on your back, you can go to your back now and just stretch through your legs and arms. Just feel your whole back body against the floor, the back of your legs, your heels, buttocks, upper back, shoulders, back of your head. Just feel everything supported there. And then just take a few minutes to move in your body in a way that feels of delightful to you. Just moving in a way that you need to this morning before I guide. And if stillness is what feels delightful to you right now, just take a few moments of stillness, feeling the earth supporting beneath you. And then from here, let's everyone take our legs long, and you can bring your arms to the side, about 45 degrees, or at the goalpost position. And then draw your toes back towards your shins. and reach through one heel and the other heel, and just feel a slight movement in your pelvis, up and down, straightening, reaching through alternate legs. And then you might add as you reach through the right leg, reach through the right arm. And then slide everything back and reach through the left heel and reach through the left arm. And just that little pattern a few times, linking breath and movement. And see if you can have your breath be a little bit longer than your movement. So the breath is a container for your movement. And then you could play with reaching through the left leg, right arm, back to center, right leg, left arm. So a little bit of a diagonal opening. The same thing, link your movement with your breath. And then come back to center, and now take your legs wide so your feet are maybe even outside your sticky mat, and then just roll the toes to the left and then back to the right. So there'll be internal rotation on one leg and external rotation on the other. So just back and forth, the toes pointing in one direction, then the other. Feel the movement in the pelvis. So oftentimes in practice, and you might read, well, we're going to do standing posture, so we're going to stand right away. But we want to wake up the legs and wake up our awareness of where we might have some holding patterns. We get a lot of feedback from the floor to begin with. And then you can come back to center and then take the soles of your feet to the floor and just softly let your knees move back and forth here. Again, let your breath be the container for the movement, and go at a speed that feels skillful for you, in a way that you're aware of what's happening in your own body. And then come back to the center. Now take your strap. Just take the strap around one leg and leave quite a bit of strap for you to hang on to. So don't hold it right up next to your foot, but maybe a foot and a half, so that you can really stretch through that leg and then bend through the leg to the side and then open up. And you might even wrap your hand around the strap so you sort of get a better grip, and you're just moving through some flexion at the hip, at the knee. And you might play around with bringing the leg in close to your side body and then a little further out, but just feel into how the flexion and extension feels this morning. And then coming back to center, take that leg out to the side, opposite knee kind of is your ballast on the other side. And then bring the leg across center, and your knee crosses underneath the opposite direction. And you'll go back and forth with that movement. So out to the side, and then across midline, using your strap to sort of give you some support and guidance. And again, moving. If you feel pretty open and you don't have any sacroiliac issues, you can come all the way to the floor with the straight leg, and then come up and over, and maybe even switch hands and come into almost like a twist there. So your choice here in how big you want the movement to be. And then you might even keep the leg straight and take some big circles through your hip. I think this feels great. So Opposite leg is bent with the sole of the foot on the floor, and I'm just circling through my hip, the hip joint experience, and I'm going to take that in both directions. You can play with how much length you need with your strap. And then the next time your leg is pointing straight up to the ceiling, slip the other foot in. And now wrap your hands around the strap so you have some purchase on the strap. And pull down. I like to have my elbows bent, work the biceps a little bit. They don't get much work in yoga. Press your feet into the strap and pull back against your feet with the strap. Now, notice your low back, and if your low back is pressed into the floor, draw your legs a little bit away from you, so you're not so much in a forward bend, but you have just a little bit of air underneath your lumbar spine. We worked on this when we were talking about hamstrings a few classes ago. So look at the orientation of your knees relative to your ankles and feet. Feel for even opening behind the knees as you press the back of the legs open. Again, if you feel your low back is into the floor, can you draw your legs away from you a little bit so you have a little bit of forward tilting in the pelvis? And then we'll slip the foot out, the leg out, the foot out that you just worked, and we'll take the other side. So beginning with the flexion and extension. And again, you might try coming in close to the body and then out further, like you're going towards the shoulder, so towards the armpit and towards the shoulder. One might feel better than the other. Use the breath as a container. And then let this leg come out to the side. Opposite knee is the ballast going the other way. And then you'll bring your leg across midline and knee crosses underneath. And just you can work that as a little vinyasa. Just moving side to side. If you're really open and there's no SI problems, you might take that leg all the way to the floor and feel an opening on the inner seam of your leg. And then you might want to take it all the way over and do a twist. So your choice here as you open the inside of the leg. And then give yourself a little more room with the strap. And same thing here, you can make some big circles through the hip. Going in both directions. And then the next time you're pointed up towards the ceiling, slide both feet back into the strap. Make some loops around your hands. You get good purchase on the strap. Press through your feet. Draw your legs away so you get the little arch in your back and your lumbar spine. Just enough space under the lumbar spine. And look for the tracking, even tracking of your knees. So we did this a few times a couple of classes ago where we really were paying attention to those bands, those big stringy bands in the back of the knees. Have those pressing equally. Now, press your feet into the strap and spread your toes as wide as possible. And then extend through your ankles with the toes spread wide. And then pull back, so toes towards shins. And then a few times, just like that, flexion and extension at the ankles with a little bit of pressure from you pulling on the strap. Feel the work in the front of the shin, the peroneus, anterior, that musculature in the front of the shin, the lower leg, doesn't get worked a lot, so feel that work. Good. And then we'll take the strap over to the side and just take your legs long for a couple of breaths. Just come to Tadasana. So pull your toes back towards your shins evenly. And you should feel, if you've got your toes pulling back evenly, so pinky toe side is even as big toe side, you should feel a slight internal rotation of the thighs. Slight internal rotation. Just 2 breaths here. Great. And then soles of the feet to the floor. Pressing into the soles of your feet, lift your hips, lift your arms behind you, and then lower everything down. Leave the arms there and just feel length through your spine. And then slide your hands back to position like the big snow angel way. And then lift hips again. Arms come behind, back of the hands touch the floor. Leave your arms there and roll out really slowly so you feel a real lengthening through the spine. Then slide your arms back to center. Just a few of those. Keep the chin pointed up towards the ceiling so you have the natural curve in your neck remain. And then we'll meet with arms to the side, knees bent. And now press your heels into the floor and lift your toes. Scoop your heels back towards your buttocks and then press your hips up. Now the hamstring should be engaged. So right where the top of the hamstring, where the hamstring meets the glutes, you can look up and see where I'm touching with my hands. Feel that engagement there. Keep scooping your heels back towards your buttocks or towards your shoulders, I guess. They're on the floor. And really feel the engagement of the hamstrings. You could have your arms just down by your side, or you could bend your elbows and point your fingers up towards the ceiling. And we'll lower down and release. So the release might be a big arch in your back, or you might feel like you want to pull your knees towards your chest. We'll do one more. So lift the toes. Press the heels down into the floor and back towards your buttocks, and then lift. And you'll feel a little bit more engagement in the hamstrings. So we want, when we're standing, and we're standing strongly, we want engagement both the front of the leg and the back of the leg. An even engagement through our legs. And then we'll just lower that back down. Great, and then just take one of your blocks here just to call on the abdominals to fire up. So squeezing the block between your legs, upper inner thigh, or closer to the knees if that feels more comfortable, and hands interlaced behind your head. Squeezing the block between your legs. Just lift your head and shoulders on your next exhale, and inhale, lower slowly back down. And feel the work at the solar plexus. So as you exhale and lift, feel the container of your core coming together a little tighter. You might think of the zip up from the pubic bone to the navel, but feel that area where we really want some fire, that area of confidence. Just maybe 8 to 10 rounds here. Working the inner legs here. When we squeeze the block, it works the inner legs. Part of essentially our core. And then release. Take the block to the side, either to the side or underneath your sacrum, and stretch your legs long. Point the toes away. You get an opening at the top of the thighs. You could point and flex here a bit. I think it feels quite nice to point my toes here and just let everything on the top, the front side of my legs, get a stretch and an opening. You could do this without the block if it's too much underneath your sacrum. Right, and then we'll take the soles of the feet to the floor, press up, remove the block, and either roll to one side to press up or cross at the ankles and come up. And then when you come up, we'll come right to a seated fold. So you might have your feet in closer, and if possible, you could have your ankles underneath your knees. And here, you could also use your two blocks to give your knees some support. And then find that forward tilt. Find the forward tilt of the pelvis. And this might be where your stretch is, or you might be able to bring your hands forward. I'm going to move the blocks out for myself. Your hands forward, and now you'll feel a stretch in the outer hip flexors. So maybe 2 full breaths with one shin in front. And then walk yourself back and switch. Again, get the forward tilt. Pelvis tilts forward. You have a neutral to little bit anterior pelvic tilt, and then we hinge forward. And now you should feel it probably a little stronger in the other side, the leg that's in the front, that hip flexor. Two full breaths here. And then walk back up. Take one of your blocks and set it down at the bottom of your mat, and we're going to come to our belly. And as graciously as possible, you're going to find the block and squeeze it between your ankles. Okay, and then we're going to lift the block and let's do about 8 hamstring curls here. So as you move the legs up and down, squeezing the block between your ankles and working the hamstrings. See if you can just use the hamstrings, so don't get into a deep arch in the back. Try not to borrow from the low back, but keeping the block as still as possible. And your head could be resting on your hands here. Forehead on your little hand pillow. Okay. And then very carefully set the block back down. Just leave it there for now. And get comfy again. Stretch through your legs. So reach out, stretch through your legs. And then the inner thigh is going to rotate towards the ceiling. Inner thigh towards the ceiling. So it's almost like you're flaring your feet out. Right? Inner thigh. So if you straighten through your legs, think of the inner thigh spiraling up towards the ceiling. Great. And then pressing into your pubic bone, can you draw the buttocks down towards your hamstring? Draw your buttocks down towards your hamstring. So that cue might help you. Pressing your pubic bone into the floor might help you. But lift now the right leg. You can take the left arm out as well. and then set everything back down. And then lift the left leg, just the leg if you want, or add the right arm, and then set everything back down. And just go back and forth a few times, one leg at a time, opposite arm if you want, set it back down. Gaze is just, if you lift everything, if you have your head lifted because your arms are lifted, your gaze is just right off the front of your mat. If you have your head down because you're just using your legs, that's fine. And then once you've done sort of an even number on both sides, you come back to resting your head on your little pillow. I think maybe easiest to bring your arms down to the side to start with your forehead on the floor. And then lift both legs, lift your head and chest, reach your arms back. And if you want a little arm work, you can squeeze an imaginary block between your hands. Feel the inner thigh spiraling towards the ceiling. Keep pressing pubic bone into the floor and draw the buttocks down to the attachment of the hamstring. Okay, and then release yourself down to the floor. Take your hands underneath your shoulders. Now you should feel the block back there still between your feet. Press yourself up to all fours. And you might have a little adjusting to do, but you should still have the block right there between your ankles. Squeezing the block between your ankles, lift here, bring it up as close to your buttocks as possible and set it back down. Keep squeezing it between your ankles, trying not to let it oscillate too much. And let's do about 8 to 12 reps here. Feel the work of the hamstrings. If there's too much on your wrists for whatever reason, just go down to your forearms. Good work for the hammies. Great, and then next time you set the block down, nice and even, you should be able to almost just come right back and set your hips on the block. You might have to adjust a little bit. Okay, so now tops of the feet are on the floor, and see if you can line up everything pretty symmetrical. So you're squeezing your ankles into the block, tops of the feet are on the floor. And then we'll bring one hand back, the other hand back. So we're in a sort of a modified Virasana, hero's pose, stretching the top of the quads here. Tops of the feet getting a stretch, tops of the quads getting a stretch. And then come forward, come onto your knees, take the block away. Maybe set your blocks up now towards the top of your mat. And turn your toes under, favorite stretch. Toes under. And set your heels back, or your hips back on your heels, or feet a little closer together, and hips on the block. Good, so while we're opening the bottoms of the feet, we'll inhale the arms up and just come passing through center. Just a few times, just this movement of opening up through the shoulders as we open up the feet. And you could have any variation here that you wanted, or you could, if you want a little more fierceness, to make that fierceness in the Manipura chakra, you could just bring your arms up and isometrically draw them apart and feel the fire mounting there in the solar plexus chakra, if not in your feet. Good. Release that. Come forward onto your hands. If you had the block there, remove the block, and you can take the tops of the feet and slap them against the floor. It feels pretty good. Great. And then we'll stretch out a little bit. Take the right toes back and under and stretch through your calves. So it might be worthwhile to turn the ankle, the heel out and the heel in, and get a different part of the calf. So let's do both sides, both legs. Pulsing or holding as you choose. Either one is fine. And then come back to hands and knees. Place your hands on the mat as wide as the sticky mat, with either turned out slightly so the index finger lines up with the long edge of the mat, or the middle finger, whatever is going to feel better for your shoulders. Find weight in the arch, the fingers, so not so much weight in the heel of your hand, but balance that on all four corners of your hands. Turn your toes under, lift your knees, press your hips up and back, come into downward facing dog. Now, can you feel the engagement in your hamstrings by isometrically creating that same drawing of the buttocks? Even though we've got our hips up, can you draw the buttocks down towards the hamstring attachment? Engage the heels. And then slowly, 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 we'll walk our feet up to our hands. This is where I would like you to have your blocks. And keep your blocks out in front of you and come into Ardha Uttanasana. So you have the floor is basically a little bit higher, and your blocks could be at the highest setting here. So we're getting a hamstring stretch, but we're keeping the back nice and long. Good. And then hands to hips, press up into standing Tadasana. And I'm just going to move back into the frame here. So now in your Tadasana, have your feet, hip distance apart, maybe a little wider, a little closer as your desire is. And then close your eyes, let your arms come to the side, palms forward, and rock slightly back and forth to the ball of the foot, to the metatarsal arch, and then back to the heel, and then find neutral. Find neutral. And then inhale and lift up onto your toes and bring your hands behind you, touching opposite hand, opposite shoulder, and exhale back down. We'll do a few rounds of that. So inhale, sweep the arms up and bring them behind you, touching shoulders behind you, and then exhale, release back down. Each time crossing the arms the opposite way. So good for our balance, good for strengthen our calves. Let's do two more. Good, and now we'll inhale the arms up. And then on your exhale, interlace your hands. So feet are about hip distance apart. You'll interlace your hands and you'll come to a squat and bring the hands out in front. Okay, so the hands counterbalance the sitting back in the squat. And then inhale, arms come up. Just stand up on your legs. Take your time because you might feel a little dizzy. Exhale, as you interlace the hands, you'll drop down into a squat and reach the hands forward. And then inhale, sweep everything up. Exhale, interlace the hands, opposite grip. Drop down, reach forward, hips back, butt back. Inhale, sweep up. And exhale, sit in the squat. Inhale, sweep up. Interlace hands, sit down in the squat. Inhale, sweep up. Exhale, reach forward, sit back. Inhale, sweep up. Exhale, sit back, reach forward. Let's hold this one for a count of 3. And then release onto your hands and knees. Taking one foot towards your buttocks, stretching now that calf, the front of the leg a little bit. Balancing on your knees here. And then reaching back for the other. Great. And then setting up your blocks, so now you're on your knees. You'll take the block beside the bent knee. You'll extend the other leg out and take the block to the outside of that leg. So gate pose. Gate pose helps us to open up the inside of the leg. This is really a very similar pose to triangle. So you might have your hand on your thigh of the extended leg, and that might be your gate pose. You might have your hand on your block, highest setting, and that might be your gate pose. For most of us, the toes will probably be up, but if you can, if you've got the flexibility in your ankle to at least intend the sole of your foot down to the floor, you could go there. If you're a little more open, you could take the block down a setting. I'm going to keep mine up on the highest setting. So both of my blocks are on the high setting. I'm going to take 2 breaths on this side. So I'm on the inhale, I'm working the length, and on the exhale, I'm gathering at the core, particularly in that solar plexus area. Then on my next inhale, I'll inhale, come up, exhale, bring my hand to the other block, reach up and over. Again, 2 breaths, now working the posture. So the inhale, I'm reaching through the side body, and on the exhale, I'm gathering everything in, and particularly at the solar plexus. And then on my next inhale, I'll sweep the top arm back up, come back over to the straight leg, inhale, exhale, gather. Inhale to reach through the top arm. Really press down into the heel of the long leg, and maybe even think about externally rotating that thigh, because that's the movement in triangle, right? That's what this leg is kind of mimicking here. And then inhale to come up and just rest here. Come to your knees, both knees. Maybe a few pelvic tilts just to neutralize your pelvis and get you back in symmetry. And then set up your second side. Great. So again, the cues are that this extended leg, we really want to try to work this thigh into external rotation, because this is the shape of triangle, right? When we're standing, we'll go to there soon. And you might have your hand on the thigh for your gait, or the block in any position. And you'll inhale the opposite arm up and over, and on the exhale, gather everything in the core. And then inhale to work the pose a little bit more, lengthen the side body, Other side body is contracting, right? And exhale, gather the core. And then we'll inhale to sweep up. Exhale, come to the other side. Inhale, reaching. Exhale, don't let this long leg get lazy here. So press your heel into the floor. Engage muscle to bone. And then we'll sweep back up, go back to the long leg side. Inhale, up and over. Exhale, gather. Gather muscle to bone, externally rotating the thigh. Inhale, reach through your ring finger. Exhale, gather at the core. And inhale back. And just one more time on this side. Don't let the long leg get lazy. And then we can scoop that knee under. Come back into symmetry. Again, a couple of pelvic tilts just to get back into that symmetry position. And then we'll take our blocks to the top of the mat. Actually, take your blocks to the top of your mat. On the lowest setting, and place your hands on your blocks and come to your knees. So your hands on your blocks. The heel of the hand is sort of back near the back of the block, right? And then turn the toes under. Press the hips up and back into downward facing dog. And then walk your feet up towards your hands. And if you need to come to a higher setting, come into Ardha Uttanasana. So reaching the crown of the head away from the pelvis. Lots of length between the head and the pelvis. And then from here, feel into your low back for the tilting, the forward tilting of the pelvis. So pubic bone moving away from navel. And then wherever your fold is, coming into a forward fold. So you might bring the blocks here so you can keep the pelvis in that position and still stretch the hamstrings. Okay. And then hands to hips, elbows in, hinging up at the waist, come back up to standing. Great, now from here, just have to move my mat a little bit so I'm in the picture. It's all about me, you know. And we'll come into just a little squat now with the hands reaching forward. Great. Then hands to hips, take your weight into your right foot and reach your left foot back and come into warrior one legs. So play around with, you could use the whole width of your mat here. Front leg is bent, back leg is straight. You can bend the back leg, press into the back heel, and then re-extend. Inhale, bring the arms up. Draw the shoulder blades slightly in and down. Inhale to reach through the ring finger and the pinky finger. Send the ring and the pinky finger up towards the ceiling. Exhale, fold forward. Keep the front leg bent, just fold forward. Inhale, open up through the chest. And exhale. Now exhale, we're going to do a funny kind of exhale. We're going to exhale and drop, feel really grounded through the legs, but lift the arms back up. That's going to be the exhale. And then inhale, reach through the ring and pinky finger. So you get more length through the side body while you're grounded. Exhale, fold at the waist, bring the arms forward. Head right between the biceps if possible. Inhale, sweep the arms open. Exhale, just draw the arms up. Inhale, reach through the pinky and the ring finger. Exhale, fold just halfway. Inhale, sweep the arms open. And now on this exhale, we'll straighten the front leg, folding over like a pyramid shape. So front leg as straight as possible. You might have to scoop the back leg a little forward. And sorry, I should have told you to keep your blocks handy. You might have your blocks here. So more of a pyramid position. Really press into the big toe mound of the front foot, but draw that hip back. Press into the big toe mound and draw the hip back. Inhale, reach the crown of your head away from the pelvis, and then exhale, step both feet together. So you're in a little bit of a fold with the blocks or not. And then hands to hips, elbows point in, bend at the waist, hinge at the waist, come up to standing. Good. All right, we'll try the other side. So we'll come into a little bit of a squat. Arms come forward. Place your weight into the other leg and release. Send the second leg back. Now you're in warrior one on the other side. Leave the blocks up front by your foot if you're going to need them for pyramid. And then inhale, arms up, reaching the ring and the pinky finger towards the ceiling. Exhale, fold. So you're in a halfway, sort of a halfway Ardha Virabhudasana 1. Inhale, open everything up. Exhale, ground your legs and just reach the arms up. Draw your tailbone into the midline. Inhale, reach pinky and ring finger towards the ceiling. Exhale, fold. Inhale, sweep open. Exhale. Arms up, draw shoulder blades down and in. Inhale, reach the pinky fingers. Exhale, fold. Inhale, open up. Exhale, ground and reach. So you have this feeling of steadiness in the legs, but lightness in the upper body. And then inhale to reach the ring and pinky fingers towards the ceiling. Exhale to fold. Inhale, sweep open, big open heart. And then on this exhale, we'll straighten the front leg and fold. So either hands in prayer, sort of coming to the inside of your shin, or hands to blocks. You can scoot the back leg up slightly. Press into the front big toe mound, and at the same time drive that same hip back. Take an inhale to lengthen, separating the pelvis and the head with lots of space, and then step back foot to front foot. You're in another fold. Great. And then hands to hips, elbows point in, feel for that neutral spot, neutral pelvis as you hinge up at the waist. Great. Okay, we'll finish with Vrikasana, balancing posture. So if you need to move your mat out of the way or find some wall space, go ahead and do that. And if you'd like to play with blocks today, you can play with 1 or 2 blocks. If you really want to get a feel for the strength of the standing leg, you could play with 2 blocks and set those up beside whatever foot you're going to stand on first. So you could do this with 2, with 1, with none. But take your foot and firmly step on the block or blocks or the floor, and then press yourself up. Really feel the standing leg, that the buttocks there, the glutes are really engaged and you're really pulling the hip in. Since my head is out of the image, I'll go down to 1. So if you're using the block, step up and hover the opposite foot beside. With your hands on your hips to feel for the levelness of your pelvis, you could rest the loose leg, foot on top of foot turned in against calf, or foot into thigh. Keep your hands on your pelvis for just a few breaths to feel the evenness of your pelvis. And if you feel the bent leg side lifting, bring that knee forward a little bit. That should level out your hips. Now you could take your arms into any orientation that felt delightful to you. Maybe even do a side bend. Falling is legal. The trees are doing their thing right now. The leaves are falling. Beautiful time of the year. And we'll step down and try the other side. I like the block mostly. I don't think it's any harder, but what I think it does for me, it reminds me, as I got reminded over and over and over when I was climbing, you got to stand up on those legs. You got to stand up on them. You stand on that leg, you pull that hip in, you tighten the buttocks there, and then you find that balance. You hover. And bring foot to calf, or to the other to the opposite foot, or into your thigh. Keeping your hands on your hips to begin with to feel the levelness of your pelvis. If your pelvis is tilted towards the bent leg side, that tends to tilt up. Move that thigh forward. Press foot into thigh and thigh back into foot. Maybe you want to try side bending. Whew. And release. Come off the blocks if you're on the blocks, and just move through your hips. Shake out your legs. When you come back to your mat, you can take one sun salutation of your choice to come back down to the floor. And that could be something as simple as an inhale up and an exhale fold. Hands to the floor. Back to downward dog. Forward into the high plank. Lowering knees, or coming straight from the high plank down through to the belly. Here you could do a back bend of your choice. Press back to child's pose. So any of that, if you did some other variations or you've already done 2, that's great as well. And once you're in a relatively easy position to then transfer to your back, transition to your back, go ahead and transition to your back. And we'll take a twist here, so a twist of your choice. You could just bring the knees in and drop them to one side. Or you could take a figure 4 And use the top leg to just bring a little traction onto the bottom leg, bottom hip. So as I do like this as a twist, I think it feels quite nice. But whatever you choose, make sure you do both sides at equal time. Stay out of your stories, your limiting stories here. Stay out of the inner fake news. As you unfold, we just had a great, strong practice of standing in our power, which often is on our feet and with our legs, but is often called for in other ways as well. So anything else you need to finish, really take your time to feel, get the felt sense, this phrase we use in yoga a lot, the felt sense of how it is now. How is it now? And then taking your time to come to the floor and your back. Coming into Shavasana. And just letting everything be. Be as it is. The wood is shining this morning, red, gold, and green. The leaves lie in the ground or fall, or hang full of light in the air, still perfect in its rise and fall. It takes the place it had been coming to forever. It has not hastened here or lagged. See how surely it has sought itself, its roots passing lordly through the earth. See how without confusion it is all that it is, and how flawless its grace is. Running or walking, the way is the same. Be still. From here, you might place one hand on the solar plexus, just above the belly button, and one hand on your heart. One hand on the solar plexus, one hand on your heart. And give yourself, instead of inner fake news, give yourself the confirmation of the true essence of who you are, who you were, how you came into this world, divine love. That's who you are. And the gratitude for those in your life who have mirrored that for you, who've shown you that by example, and who have encouraged that in you. That's the truth. Stay in Shavasana as long as you like. If you want to come back up to a seat, you can. And I'll just close by saying that my love for you all is deep. I so appreciate your presence and your effort and your work and your stillness, and just all of you. So go shine bright. Namaste and have a beautiful day.